When someone asks you, what do you think happens when one day you're no longer here? Take a moment and try to hold your answer in your mind just for 3 seconds. Now, here's how Keanu Reeves answered that very question, in front of hundreds of people, on a late-night talk show.
So what do you think happens when we die, Keanu Reeves?
I know that the ones who love us will miss us.
Simple, brief, and powerful enough to leave an entire studio admire. No complicated philosophy, no attempt to sound profound. Just a few words from a man who has lived through losses most of us can't imagine. And that is exactly why Keanu Reeves stands apart in Hollywood. Usually, when we talk about the life of a movie star, the story follows a familiar arc: the rise, the peak, the scandal, the fall. But Keanu's story is different. His journey isn't about collapse, it's about how someone, carrying unimaginable grief, managed not only to endure but to grow more beloved with each passing year. Keanu Charles Reeves was born in 1964 in Beirut, Lebanon. His mother, Patricia, was a British costume designer. His father, Samuel, was Chinese Hawaiian, a geologist whose troubles with drugs and the law would later leave a permanent absence in Keanu's life. By the time he was 3, his parents had split, and the rest of his childhood unfolded like a series of stopovers: Sydney, New York, and eventually Toronto. Stability was always temporary. Growing up, Reeves was raised in part by grandparents and nannies, while his mother remarried several times. One stepfather, director Paul Aaron, briefly introduced Keanu to the film world, but what left the deeper mark was what was missing his father, the last time they saw each other. Keanu was just 13, years later. His father served time in prison on drug charges. Reflecting on it, Keanu admitted in 2002, "We thought the world would have been a much better place if he had been around." School was another uphill climb. Reeves struggled with dyslexia, moving through 4 different high schools in 5 years before eventually being asked to leave the Toronto School for the Performing Arts. He once said, "Because I had trouble reading, I wasn't a good student." But what looked like a setback became a strange advantage: to keep up. He learned to perform understanding, to act like he got it. That habit of observation and imitation became the foundation of his craft. Instead of words, Keanu relied on instinct and movement. He trained his memory through rhythm, body language, and space. That's why, decades later, his most famous characters often say less and do more. Think of Neo in The Matrix, a man defined not by speeches but by the way he learns to move through the impossible. Or John Wick, who can devastate a room with only a few words, but whose presence says everything. In Toronto, 2 passions pushed him forward: hockey and theater. As a goalie, he earned the nickname The Wall, loving the choreography of anticipation. But when an injury ended that path, acting filled the space. He started in stage productions and Canadian TV. And by the mid-1980s, Los Angeles became the next frontier. His breakthrough came in 1989 with Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, as Ted, the eternally clueless but optimistic time traveler. Keanu became an unlikely cult figure. Many actors would get stuck there, typecast forever. But Keanu swerved. Just 2 years later, he took a challenging role in Gus Van Sant's My Own Private Idaho 1991, opposite his close friend River Phoenix. When asked if he worried that such a risky role might hurt his image, Reeves shrugged it off. "Hurt my image? What image? I'm not a politician. I'm an actor." By the mid-90s, he had moved again, this time into the action spotlight with Point Break and Speed. Unlike the muscle-bound heroes of the era, Keanu's action characters were quieter, more human. They didn't overwhelm, they reacted. That subtle difference made them relatable, and it made Keanu stand out. From a fractured childhood to Hollywood newcomer, Reeves had built a career the same way he had survived school and family upheaval: by adapting, by moving, and by refusing to let one role or one hardship define him. By the mid-1990s, Keanu Reeves had already proved he wasn't going to be boxed in. He'd gone from comedy cult hero in Bill and Ted to indie credibility in My Own Private Idaho, and then into the mainstream with Point Break and Speed. But 1999 was the year everything changed. That was the year The Matrix hit theaters. On paper, the movie sounded risky, part sci-fi, part martial arts film, packed with philosophy about simulated reality. But on screen, it was electric. Bullet time, black leather, slow motion fight sequences that looked like nothing anyone had ever seen before. And at the center of it all was Keanu Reeves as Neo, the unlikely savior, the one. What made it work wasn't just the special effects. It was Keanu's particular style of presence. Neo wasn't a character who won people over with speeches. He didn't swagger like the action stars of the 80s. Instead, he hesitated, questioned, and learned. He asked the same things the audience was asking: what's real? Who do I trust? Am I enough for this? Keanu's quiet, reactive style fits perfectly, as one critic wrote at the time. He had the exact right amount of blankness to make Neo believable. The gamble paid off in ways no one expected. The Matrix grossed more than $460 million worldwide, won 4 Academy Awards, and completely redefined action cinema. Suddenly. Reeves wasn't just a movie star, he was a global icon. Kids wore black trench coats. Philosophy classes debated the red pill and the blue pill. Video games, anime, even fashion were influenced by the film's look and ideas. For Keanu personally, The Matrix marked the height of fame and financial power. The sequels, Reloaded and Revolutions, earned hundreds of millions each, making him one of the highest paid actors in Hollywood. Reports later claimed he gave away a large portion of his profits, tens of millions, to the crews who worked behind the scenes, believing they were the real heroes of the production. Whether the exact numbers are debated or not, the gesture itself became part of his legend. What's important here is how Keanu navigated this peak. Many stars at this level start to lean into the persona: more luxury, more distance, more ego. Reeves did the opposite. Stories circulated of him riding the subway in New York, giving up his seat to strangers. Fans spotted him grabbing coffee alone, chatting politely. Even during the Matrix press tours, he carried himself less like an untouchable celebrity and more like a guy just doing his job. But behind the success, there was also turbulence. While his career was reaching its highest point, Keanu's personal life was marked by deep loss. His daughter with actress Jennifer Syme was stillborn in 1999. Less than 2 years later, Syme herself died in a car accident. These tragedies, happening right as The Matrix made him one of the most famous people on the planet, could have easily led to a public collapse. But instead, Reeves processed his grief in private, rarely speaking about it beyond acknowledging the pain. In 2006, he told Parade magazine grief changes shape, but it never ends. That contrast between global fame and personal heartbreak defined this era of his life, and it also made him different from almost every other star of his generation. In Hollywood, success and scandal often arrive as a package deal. For Keanu, success and sorrow arrived at the same time, but he never let sorrow turn into scandal. After The Matrix exploded, Hollywood expected Keanu Reeves to ride the wave the way other stars did: bigger movies, flashier roles, a louder public image, and for a moment, it looked like he might. Sequels were lined up. Studios wanted him at the center of new franchises, and his bank account put him firmly in the A-list. But what came next wasn't more glory, it was heartbreak. In late 1999, Keanu and his then partner, actress Jennifer Syme, were expecting a child. Their daughter, Ava, was stillborn. The loss devastated them both, and the grief strained their relationship until they quietly separated, not long after. In 2001, Jennifer died in a car accident at just 28 years old. Keanu, who had already endured the death of his close friend River Phoenix in 1993, now faced another unthinkable loss. He carried Jennifer's coffin at her funeral. Around the same time, his younger sister Kim was fighting leukemia, a battle that stretched for nearly a decade. Keanu became her caretaker, helping to fund her treatments and often stepping away from the spotlight to be with her. Later, he quietly donated millions to hospitals and cancer research foundations. He never attached his name to splashy campaigns. He just gave what he could. For most celebrities, these kinds of blows stacked one after another become the beginning of a downward spiral. The narrative is familiar tragedy fuels reckless choices. Reckless choices fuel headlines. And soon, the fall begins. But Keanu's response was the opposite. Instead of imploding in public, he withdrew into privacy. Instead of using grief as an excuse for self-destruction, he used it to deepen his work. When asked about loss years later, his answer was simple. When the people you love are gone, you're alone. Grief changes shape, but it never ends. That quiet honesty stood out in an industry built on spin. It didn't make him a tragic figure, it made him a human one. Still, his career wasn't invincible. The early 2000s brought some box office disappointments. Films like Sweet November and The Watcher didn't connect with audiences. And even after the Matrix sequels, there was talk that maybe Reeves had peaked. Hollywood, always eager for a new face, began to look elsewhere for the next action star. But here's where the fall that everyone predicted never quite materialized. Keanu didn't fight the press, didn't stage a reinvention campaign, and didn't try to become someone he wasn't. He kept working steadily, sometimes in big-budget films, sometimes in smaller projects. He treated crew members with kindness, stayed humble with fans, and let time pass. One of the clearest signs of his approach came not from a blockbuster, but from a meme. In 2010, that now famous photo of Keanu sitting alone on a park bench with a sandwich went viral as Sad Keanu. For many celebrities, an image like that would be embarrassing. But Keanu's reaction was disarmingly straightforward. I was just eating a sandwich, man. Instead of damaging his image, the meme only added to it. People didn't laugh at him, they sympathized. In a strange way, it confirmed what audiences already believed, that behind the roles, Keanu Reeves was just a regular guy carrying invisible weight. The so-called cracks in his story loss, grief, box office dips, internet memes should have led to a fall. But for Keanu, they became something else, proof of resilience. Proof that his career and his life wasn't following Hollywood's usual script. By the early 2010s, Keanu Reeves had become something of a ghost in Hollywood. He was still around, appearing in films, directing a small indie project, dabbling in documentaries, but the era of Matrix-level fame felt like it had passed. The industry had moved on to a new generation of action stars, Marvel superheroes, muscle-bound franchise players, and fast-talking comedians. And then, in 2014, everything changed. A mid-budget action movie called John Wick arrived in theaters with almost no hype. The premise was simple: a retired hitman seeking vengeance after gangsters kill his dog, a final gift from his late wife. On paper, it sounded almost too small, too pulpy, to matter. But on screen, it was electric. The choreography was crisp, the mythology unexpectedly deep, and at the heart of it was Keanu Reeves, giving one of the most intense and disciplined performances of his career. Audiences didn't just watch it, they believed it. Every reload, every judo throw, every sharp movement felt authentic, because Keanu had trained like his life depended on it. He spent months mastering Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, judo, and advanced weapons handling. He performed the majority of the stunts himself, just as he had in The Matrix years earlier. Watching him in John Wick wasn't like watching a star pretending to fight. It was like watching a man who had lived through pain, channeling all of it into precision and discipline. The result, John Wick became a sleeper hit. Word of mouth spread, a sequel followed, then another, then another. By 2023, the franchise had grossed over $1 billion worldwide. Keanu Reeves wasn't just back, he was bigger than ever. But here's the real story. John Wick worked not just because of the action, but because of what audiences projected onto it. Wick is a man defined by grief, the loss of his wife, the theft of his last connection to her, beneath the gun-fu and the body count. It's a story about mourning, about carrying pain and turning it into purpose. Fans couldn't help but see the parallels. Keanu Reeves, the man who had endured River Phoenix's overdose, the stillbirth of his daughter, the death of Jennifer Syme, and years of quiet struggle, was now playing a character whose every action was motivated by loss. He didn't have to act grief, he had lived it. One fan comment summed it up perfectly: Keanu doesn't play John Wick, he is John Wick. And that's why this comeback wasn't just another Hollywood return to form. It was something deeper. Keanu had transformed tragedy into art. He had turned what could have destroyed him into the very foundation of his second act. At the same time, stories about his off-screen generosity began to circulate more widely than ever. Tales of him riding the subway, giving up his seat, writing multi-million-dollar checks to crews and special effects teams, buying Harley-Davidson motorcycles for his stunt team, quietly funding cancer research. These weren't PR stunts. They were consistent habits that spanned decades. The internet amplified them, building a mythology of the nicest guy in Hollywood. In an era when most stars were scrutinized for hypocrisy, Keanu seemed immune. There was no gap between his public persona and private behavior. The man who smiled politely with fans on the street was the same man who shared his profits with crew members. The man who grieved silently was the same man who refused to exploit that grief for attention. That consistency became his greatest shield. So, while John Wick reestablished his career, Keanu's real comeback was bigger than box office. It was cultural. He became something almost no one in Hollywood achieves: a universally beloved figure, admired not just for his roles, but for his character. And here's the twist: this wasn't an accident. It wasn't just good luck or the internet decided to love him. It was the product of choices. Choices to stay humble. Choices to value collaboration over ego. Choices to carry grief with dignity. Choices to keep moving, even when it would have been easier to stop. The fall that should have broken Keanu Reeves never happened because he built an architecture of resilience strong enough to withstand it. By the time John Wick Chapter 4 hit theaters in 2023, the cheers weren't just for the movie, they were for the man himself. A man who had been counted out, written off, and nearly erased by tragedy, but who came back stronger, without ever becoming harder. That's why this is the true climax of Keanu Reeves' story. Not his rise to fame, not his quiet endurance of loss, but his transformation of pain into legacy. He didn't just survive Hollywood, he redefined what survival could look like. By now, Keanu Reeves is more than just a movie star. He's a cultural symbol. He represents something audiences, especially younger generations, long for in their celebrities' authenticity. Think about it. Hollywood is filled with stories of meteoric rises and inevitable crashes. We've seen actors flame out in scandal, singers crumble under pressure, influencers implode under the weight of their own hype. The cycle is so predictable that it feels almost scripted: fame, then excess, and finally downfall. That's what people expect. That's what the media feeds on. But Keanu broke the script. He endured tragedies that could have wrecked him. He faced career slumps that could have erased him. He even became a meme that could have turned him into a punchline. And yet, none of it brought him down. Instead, each challenge became part of the mythology that made him stronger. How? The answer isn't glamorous. It's in the small things. The choice to treat crew members as equals. The decision to give away millions without announcing it. The humility to ride the subway and wait in line like everyone else. The honesty to admit grief never really leaves. These aren't headline moves, they're habits. And habits, stacked over decades, build resilience. That's the real Keanu effect. He didn't just survive fame, he found a way to live inside it without losing himself. He turned kindness into armor. He turned grief into art. And he turned an ordinary moment, eating a sandwich on a park bench, into proof that being human is more powerful than being perfect. For young people growing up in an age of constant visibility where every misstep can be screenshotted, every joke can become a meme, Keanu's story carries a lesson. You don't have to perform your life for approval. You don't have to chase image over substance. You don't have to follow the cycle of rise and fall. There's another way: build your own architecture of resilience, brick by brick, through the choices you make every day. And maybe that's why Keanu Reeves remains so beloved. Because in him, people don't just see an action star. They see a blueprint for surviving a world that constantly wants to break you. So let's return to the question he answered on late night TV. What happens when we die? Keanu's response was simple: I know that the ones who love us will miss us. The real takeaway is this: what matters isn't whether you rise or fall in the eyes of the world. What matters is the impact you leave on the people around you, the ones who will carry your memory when you're gone. And maybe the bigger question is, in the story of your own life, will you let the world write your downfall, or will you, like Keanu Reeves, write something else entirely?